What's important is the final exam. MCQs I definitely did. It was a very shocking moment for me, especially the A-level culture starting to... Any biology student can agree with me. So I think the biggest mistake is doing it without timing. I definitely felt stressed in so many situations.
Welcome to SciTech Bookshop. Today we are very happy to speak with Sheron Sahithyan, the English medium candidate high ranked in 2025 examination English medium, Island 17, District 7. At SciTech, we believe achievement comes from the students' own hard work, discipline, teachers, family commitments and consistent practice. Our role is to help students access the right books, learning materials at the right time. Hi Sheron.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Sheron, congratulations. First of all, tell me, what did you feel when you get to know about your results?
It was a very shocking moment for me. I was waiting for a very long time for these results to come, and we were waiting all night. And finally when it came, it took me quite some time for me to process and for it to fully sink in. And so it was a time filled with joy and maybe some surprise, and definitely euphoric moment where years of hard work culminates in this one moment to give you this sort of message that you've done good enough to have received this rank and whatnot.
Can you tell us about your school, stream and subjects?
Our school played a very special role, I'd say, in my A-level career. We had very supportive teachers the entire way. We had our class teacher who was a very mother-like figure to us. She was very helpful in times of distress. Whenever we had problems, we could always come to her and she'd help us out in one way or another. She was very dedicated, and she would take care of us like her own children, which we felt, all of us together. And even the other teachers, our own subject teachers, they were very helpful. They were always behind us. Whenever we had a doubt in the subject matter, they would go out of their way to come and help us, be it asking questions from papers or just subject matters. When we had doubts in the lessons, they were always there for us and played a very important role. So the school had a very special place for me, during my A-levels.
When did you start first seriously preparing for your A-levels?
I think the word serious has a sort of weird implication in today's culture, especially the A-level culture, starting to study seriously. But I think from the very first day I had a determination that I wanted to do something worthwhile, I'd say is the best word. So from the very first day I was quite focused and attentive in the classes, and I'd never missed any of the classes really. And so throughout my A-level career I felt like I maintained a sort of steady level of seriousness, if you will.
According to the timetable, you managed to do all this work.
Yeah, I think I would say so, yeah.
Were you always as a top perform student, or you improved gradually?
I think from a very young age I had the goal of always trying to perform my best. I never sort of slacked down at any point, but that doesn't always make me the top performing student. Definitely that wasn't the case, but I always wanted to try to be that person, and I tried my best to be the best. But even though I had slips and tumbles throughout the learning time, I always tried my best. So to answer whether I was always the top student, no, but was I always trying to be, then definitely yes.
Many students created timetables, but they failed on it. How did you manage to create a timetable and work on the timetable?
The timetable idea I've never really found to work for my type of persona, at least. I wasn't very good at always sticking to a fixed schedule. It was maybe a little too constrictive for me, and I enjoyed the freedom of wanting to learn what I needed to at the moment than what I had to at that particular time. So during A-levels, you never know which subject at that moment is going to be the most important, which you need to work the most for, and so a preset timetable which you make, well before, and trying to stick with that throughout wouldn't really be the smartest choice,
Yes.
for me at least. I know there are some people who have timetables and are very strict with that, and it works for them. But for me personally, I always enjoyed the freedom of being able to choose what subject I could learn at that moment and what I needed to at the moment.
Sheron, tell me, which subject was your strongest, and tell me why?
My strongest subject and my favorite subject, if anybody knows me, they know well, is physics. I've always had a deep love for physics ever since I started learning in O-level time itself. Seeing in the grade 10 textbooks and the grade 11 textbooks, the physics
part, yes,
using equations to kind of figure out these various things that happen in our physical world, it was very interesting to me. And so that carried on into my A-levels as well. So I always studied physics the most and I enjoyed doing it the most, and yeah, that's it.
So which subject was the challenging subject for you in your A-level?
Any biology student can agree with me that biology is definitely the most challenging. Maybe not, but for me at least it took the most time to learn. It was definitely, from the exam perspective at least, the most difficult to score marks in. Because as our A-level syllabus goes, it goes beyond just conceptual learning. It goes into the memorizing the facts and remembering all of those and carrying all that load in your heads for so long. So that was definitely the most challenging for me.
How did you approach theory learning?
Theory learning, I always loved referring the true textbooks on which our resource books were based on. So I enjoyed reading things like the Campbell book of biology, and for physics there were various source materials which our resource books were based on. So I enjoyed reading those, at least just a little bit, so that I can have some context on which our syllabus is built on. And that helped me to sort of navigate our own syllabus quite easily, and it gave me sort of a strong foundation which I can completely rely on and completely trust to be true and accurate. So that's what my method for theory learning was.
So how did you prepare for your MCQs?
MCQs, I definitely did the past papers thoroughly several times over and over. It just goes without saying for A-levels that how important MCQs are. And so I really capitalized on the fact that each MCQ carries a whole mark in the paper. And I made sure that that was my biggest strength, because it was readily available for us to take, that easy way of obtaining such solid marks. And so I did it by practicing past papers over and over. Here and there I would do the school papers that you can get from various places, but it was definitely the past papers that I can recommend without any hesitation at all.
And in the paper, as we all know, the structured essay and essays are very important. Can you explain me the way of preparation for the structured essays and essays?
The preparation for the structured essays and essays is different for each of the subjects. So for biology, the structured essays, I genuinely just had to read through the resource book and then practice on school papers which you can purchase, and just going over that again and again, and marking the school papers which I have done, the structured essay papers, using the resource book as reference. And for essays for biology, the most notorious, it was just bulk memorization, breaking down that huge sections into smaller sort of groups of information, and then breaking those down even more, creating a link between each of those larger pieces of information and forming the whole essay as it is. So that was my method for biology. And then for chemistry, the structured essay is sort of like a maze which you just have to navigate through, which comes solely from practice of past papers, repeated practice. You have to time yourself, how quickly you're doing each question, and it's just sort of like a drill where you have to repeat that same drill at the final paper as well. And the chemistry essays, of course, chemistry essays and physics essays alike just come from practicing past papers and any paper for that matter. They aren't, they don't have their own sort of special practice methods, in my opinion at least. They can sort of be done as per usual, which doing past papers definitely does help a lot for those as well. And the physics structured essay, which is definitely the most unique because we have practical based structured essays there, which is not found in the other two as much at least. So those come from going through the practical guide and when the teachers do the practicals at school, paying attention to different things, different problems that arise during our practicals, and keeping track of them, all sorts of things like that. So because the practicals are involved, that gives it some sort of different importance which you have to approach in a different way.
Yeah. Now, how often you had been used to do past papers?
Past papers, like I've said before, it goes without saying how important past papers are. I did past papers every day, at least an MCQ of one, or maybe a structured essay of one, or an essay. It depends on what the day demands, but past papers were always a go-to of mine for studying.
Yeah. And how did you correct your mistakes? You used to keep an error mistake book, or keeping a book for that, or how did you describe me the way of...
So this I sort of came across much later in my A-level career, a little bit closer to the exams. I started maintaining a small short notebook which I can keep the mistakes that I've made in the past, the papers that I've done in the past, or the papers that I'm doing in the future as well. I just kept note of, or kept track of rather, all the mistakes that I'm making. I did that especially for the MCQs, but also occasionally for the structured essays, for bio at least. So it just gave me a quick view at the mistakes that I've made in the past, just to make sure that I have overcome these problems. So it makes sure that I'm not missing out on any mistakes that I've made in the past and making the same mistakes again, which would be very costly in terms of the marks at least.
How many years of past papers you did?
The number of years of past papers...
we'll say physics first.
Yeah, so for physics, I did from 2000 onwards, the past papers. And then for chemistry, because the style of the questions was slightly different back then, I thought it was best to do from 2011 onwards. And for biology, of course, because the syllabus is very specific, I did from 2019 onwards.
I would like to know, what is the biggest mistake that students are doing while past papers?
I can't speak for everyone, but what I've seen in a lot of my friends and peers is doing the papers without the timing, because you can do any paper no matter how hard it is if you have been given an unlimited amount of time. Whereas when you introduce that time factor, it introduces not only this fact that you have to do it in a shorter period of time, but also this external pressure that's building up on you as you take longer and longer time to answer a question. So I think the biggest mistake is doing it without timing. Apart from that, I think most other mistakes seem far more small compared to the not timing the papers problem.
How important are the official marking scheme? I mean the original marking scheme.
The original marking schemes definitely are very important, because they include certain pieces of information that provide a lot of context for each year and why those specific answers were given for that particular year, which you don't really find in a lot of compilations of past papers, whether the past paper books or whatever. They tend to avoid those bits of information like that, which is almost criminal in some cases, but you can get over it in others. But it's definitely very important, what I would say. I personally benefited a lot from using those original marking schemes.
Did repeated practice change your confidence level?
Definitely. I think speaking from my past experience was, I was very unconfident with chemistry when I sort of started going to these paper classes, and I felt like I was far behind all the other students. And so when I started doing the past papers repetitively, answering these questions, I felt like I could slowly feel my confidence going up, because my speed of the questions, answering the questions, was increasing, and then I could even sometimes recall the newer questions. I could recall past questions which were quite similar to them and answer them in a similar method in each year. So definitely it was important in increasing my confidence.
Yeah, what type of books helped you a lot? I mean, the MCQs, resource book, review books. What were the books that helped you most?
Yes, so for biology, of course, it's the resource book. It is the holy Bible of the subject. And so the resource book was definitely very important for bio, and likewise even for chemistry as well, because it's a very potent book, which the questions are solely based off of. But for physics, more than the resource book, I felt like the past papers were what sort of helped me increase my thinking creativity and things like that. So for bio and chemistry, the resource books, yes, maybe also the source material books, but I can't stress enough the resource books, the importance of them for bio and chemistry.
Yeah.
For physics, the resource books are definitely useful because they give us a sort of outline of where our syllabus, the scope of the syllabus is pointed. But for further practice and further development, they are sort of a limiting factor if I had to nitpick. Apart from that, the past paper books and
Resource books.
the review books especially were very important for physics.
Yeah, how did you manage to choose correct books without getting confused?
That was all a lot of trial and error. At the beginning, I was buying books left and right. Whichever I saw was most attractive in terms of what they had in terms of their contents and whatnot. So I was buying several books which I ultimately didn't actually end up using as much. I definitely had a few of my seniors, who I'm very grateful for, who helped me to choose out some important books which I purchased with their advice. Apart from that, it was just a lot of trial and error in my experience. At least I would buy a certain book and it wouldn't be what I was expecting it to be, and then I just put it aside, maybe try a different book. So it was a little bit difficult, but I suppose that's part of the process.
Yeah. As a SciTech customer, what made you to visit SciTech.lk, or you visited the SciTech Bookshop?
I was first recommended this by a senior from school who had the biology resource books well binded and organized together as two separate books. So I was very interested and gravitated towards this book, and I asked him where he got it and whatnot. So he recommended SciTech to me, and then so that was the first time I came to the store and made the purchase of these resource books. And then I also noticed the past paper books that they had to offer, and they also were definitely a big help for me in my A-level time.
Yeah. Did online ordering help you to save your time while your examination preparations?
Yeah, definitely, because online ordering sort of gets the whole deal of having to travel to the bookshop and then looking for the books there, and then sometimes finding out there's a different version of the book as well. So then you have to make the choice there. Whereas when you have the online ordering, you have the comfort of your home, where you can just quickly scroll through, find which books you need, add them to cart, and check out with far more ease.
Yeah. As an English medium student, what were the difficulties that you had to face while choosing good materials for your A-level? Yes.
So because the majority of the students take the exam in Sinhala medium and also in Tamil mediums as well. So the amount of material that we have for the English medium is limited in certain departments.
Yeah.
So certain reviews by professors were available previously only in Sinhala medium, and even now the extended years of those reviews are still available only in Sinhala medium. So things like that, and the number of books, the supplementary books for A-levels, like for subjects like chemistry and physics, are also still available only in Sinhala medium. So it was quite difficult for me to having to translate those papers or books or reviews or whatnot into English, and then trying to use them was quite tedious, and I usually avoided things like that just because of how hard they were to get the information from them.
Yeah. At SciTech Bookshop, we have Sinhala medium and English medium materials both. So how important it is for the students to find books?
Yeah, so it was very important because only after I came to SciTech did I realize that the review books for physics and chemistry like that were available in the English medium as well, which until they had translated and published them, they weren't available in English medium to any of the students, and so that was a very big deal for me. And also certain other books, they also they publish that they were also available in the English medium, which were also useful for me in my A-level career.
Sheron, just tell me, did you ever feel stressed, anxiety, tired when you were preparing for the A-level examination?
These are definitely problems that come up in most of the A-level students' life, and I'm no exception to that as well. I definitely felt stressed in so many situations, anxious as well, because there were moments where I was falling behind in terms of the syllabus coverage speed, where people around me were covering the syllabus much faster, and things like not being prepared for certain exams that are showing up, and a lot of exams happening in quick succession to each other. Those were sources of huge amounts of stress and whatnot. So I always benefited from my family, who were always there for me whenever I had these problems with this. I would talk to my parents about it. I would say, that I'm feeling stressed about these things, and they would give me some good piece of advice that I would use to critically think about the situation and find the best solution for that moment, because there's only so much you can do when you're faced with a certain number of problems in your life. So I definitely got the advice from my parents, who told me to not be stressed about things like this, because this is all part of the process. Definitely you have to endure things like this, and it happens to everyone. It's not just those who are at the bottom, not just those who are at the top. It's for everyone.
Yeah.
So definitely this stress, anxiety, they are huge sort of limitations that show up in each A-level student's life, and it's the matter of overcoming this stress and this anxiety that after that the sky is the limit for you. So make sure that this stress and anxiety is not a problem. You have to find your own ways to overcome them. Maybe it's through spirituality, maybe it's through some sort of physical activity, maybe it's some social activity, maybe even
music and
yeah, so it's even just a small matter of sitting down, having a cup of tea with your family. That those are all avenues to relieve this sort of stress in your lives. So that was a very important factor in my A-levels as well.
what did you do when you got low marks in your paper or a test?
Yeah, so those were always moments of extreme pain and even embarrassment in some ways. So my first reaction would be to sort of be a very negative reinforcement sort of way, where I would cut down on so many useful activities that I engage in, and beat myself up about it, which is not really the right way of approaching that problem. So for me, the method that I found that works best is to identify what mistakes you made throughout that paper or that test or that assessment, and then sort of work around ways of improving each of those different areas. Say your work, you don't seem to completely understand this particular section in physics or this particular lesson in chemistry. The best way is to go back and revisit the old theory notes or whatever is convenient for you, and then go back and answer questions in those classified papers, just targeting that particular type of mistake that you're making. And once you're completely okay with that, then you can revisit the entire paper as a whole, just to see if that was all that was limiting you. If you find some new mistake that you found that that was what was limiting you, then apply the same method to that as well. So all in all, one by one, just ticking off the little mistakes that make up this big mistake of the paper, the low marks on your paper.
Yes. So what is the advice that you can give to a students who feels always in behind?
It's a common occurrence to feel that you're behind, really. It takes time, definitely, for you to slowly build up, gradually reaching the higher ranks and whatever.
Yeah.
So, they say Rome was not built in a day, it wasn't built in a week either. So, it takes a very long time for you to slowly and gradually build up, fix each and every mistake, clean up everything, tidy up all your workflows and everything, so that you can finally end up with a good result at the end. Because what's important is the final exam, not the
Yes.
path you take to the final exam. It doesn't matter how terribly low you were in the beginning. What matters is that you work your way up there. So, don't feel crushed about it, don't feel bad about yourself. Just look at the positive side of it, that you have, so much work to do, and, eagerly work towards it. That would be my advice.
I Sharon, can you just explain me about the final preparation, just 1 week, from 1 week before the exam?
Yeah, so this is the sort of the culmination of everything, where all these years of hard work have, led up to this one moment, where you'll be judged on how well you've done so far. So what you do in this time is very important. You shouldn't be working yourself too much to the point where you're extremely stressed about it, where it can cause, a complete breakdown of your psyche. It's very important that you don't overwork yourself in this moment, because all the work you could have ever done, all the 99.9% of the work you could have ever done, is all done and over with.
Yeah.
This 0.1% of the work is mainly for preparing your mind to face this huge exam, this huge barrier in your life. So it's important that, yes, you don't overwork yourself, but at the same time, you don't underwork yourselves to the point where your stress levels have completely dropped off, and now you're not in the mood for, or rather the correct mindset for facing this huge task. Because there is some amount of stress that is definitely a positive influence on you. You'll definitely push yourself further than what you would have normally done, and so that's very important. However, when that stress level exceeds far more than what it should be, and that's when you start losing all this progress that you've made, you start negatively impacting yourself, you can start blacking out during the exam. That is just the worst case scenario. So it's important to find that right balance. You should be having regular breaks during your study in this period. You should not make sure that you should not be continuously just slouched around your books and out of touch with everything else. You should be in that mindset, because you're going to this whole new place, right? Even though it's your school or whichever exam center you get, even though you've been there countless times, now you're going to go there for a whole different thing. You're going to go there for the biggest exam of your life. So it's important that you're ready, you have this sort of dynamic mindset that is versatile enough that you can adapt to that new scenario and do the exam there, because you've been at your house or wherever your study place is for weeks, and now you're going to go to this whole new place. So it's important that your mind is strong enough that you can take this new jump and answer successfully, and get a good result through this whole thing.
What is your message for the students who are not yet scrolling good results?
Yeah, so like I've said before with the whole scoring low marks with the paper thing, you have to start somewhere. And I myself have found myself getting really low marks at some points for the subjects like biology, where I wasn't very confident with. So you should not get your mindset defeated by that low marks or that low scoringness. You should change. There is something wrong that you're doing, and your task is to identify what that wrong thing is. Identify it, and then strategically change your ways and change your methods to make room for new improvements in that sector of whatever you're studying. So that's the main thing. You should be you should think critically about it. You should not stress over too much, and whatever and doing anything that doesn't benefit you at that moment is pointless. So you should only be very optimistic and realistically solve that problem, whichever you have at that moment.
Yeah. As a good ranker who participated in 2025 A-level examination, what is the final message that you can give to students who are sitting for the examination this year in 1 or 2 sentences?
I'm going to say something that I was once told by one of my seniors. This exam isn't as hard as you think, and it's also not as easy as you think. So make sure you're not overestimating or underestimating yourself. Work true to yourself, be honest with yourself, and work so that anything you do, work with the mindset so that anything you do will benefit your final A-level result. That's it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sheron,
Yeah,
for
my pleasure.
participating in this conversation and visiting SciTech. And we wish you all the best for your future journey. And thank you for sharing your ideas, experiences with SciTech. And I wish you again all the best for your future.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.